When we were covering CES, we covered the production unveil of the Kenworth T680E Class 8 battery electric truck. That truck joined two other battery electric trucks in Kenworth's lineup, the K270E and K370E, which are Class 6 and 7 vehicles. With the Kenworth T680E having a 150-mile range, that's about 240 kilometers, and the Kenworth Class 6 and 7 trucks having around 200 miles of range, again, that's about 320 kilometers, there were a variety of comments about how this just showed that EV trucks couldn't make the grade when it came to haulage. Given that Elm's planned urban utility Class 3 truck has a range of just 150 miles, as does SEA Electric's C-Drive Class 8 chassis cab, and even the longer range big rigs currently available, the Freightliner e-Cascadia and Volvo's VNR, both have ranges under 300 miles, none of these touch on the kinds of ranges we've seen folks in the comments thinking are necessary. And we thought it was worth having a chat about why those 500+ mile range battery powered semi-trucks aren't needed for most jobs. But first, a little reminder to hit like, subscribe and click that notification bell. And if you'd like, consider supporting us from just $1 a month. I'll tell you how at the end. When you think of trucking, what leaps to mind? Is it the lone driver stood at a truck stop, maybe a plume of smoke rising from a cigarette, dangling from resting hands, all against the backdrop of a setting sun? Perhaps it's the lone truck counting the endless miles on a rural highway, or a caravan of trucks making a long-distance journey, each carrying a massive load. But all of these images speak to our misconceptions about trucking. For many people, trucking is conceptualized as ferrying a full load from sea to shining sea, or across Europe from country to country. But actually, the majority of trucking is nothing like that. There are, for sure, long-distance truckers who will rack up phenomenal mileages covering enormous distances each working day, a phenomenon that's particularly common in the US, where the rail network is not good. But even in Europe, where the rail network is much more robust, a depressing amount of freight is carried on the road. In 2020, about 77% of freight was moved by road in Europe, for example. It never used to be that way. When my parents were young and carefree, rail was the preferred method of getting things around the UK and the rest of Europe, and then politicians and freight haulage companies convinced businesses that trucks were better, and then politicians closed a bunch of railways. Thanks, Dr. Beeching. Although, to be fair to him, the average speed on the railways in the UK for freight at that point was something like half a mile an hour. It was just that the solution was massively misguided. Today, for those trackers racking up the massive miles, trucks like the Tesla Semi, with its potential 500-mile range, will likely end up being the way forward. But there's also a vast category of trucking termed drayage, which is the short haul of the trucking world. Drayage typically involves journeys of under 250 miles, and often far less. In fact, since drayage routes over 150 miles must be electronically tracked in the US, shorter trips are more popular. And in fact, for drivers who are sometimes paid per trip, although drayage is often billed per mile, shorter journeys are favoured too. In 2019, Mike Albert, CEO of domestic drayage digital load board DrayNow, said that the average length of haul was down by more than 25%, citing figures from Atlanta where the average run dropped from just over 200 miles to just 155 miles. And why is that? Well, there's a few factors. More and more companies have opted to build regional distribution centres, which enables them to make fewer of the really long journeys. Companies have also shifted to use inland ports or the rail network for long-haul segments of moving stuff. From that point, there's a multitude of short-haul shuffling of stock from those regional distribution centres, either to stores or indeed direct to customers. And as traditional stores are getting replaced with online stores, and those online stores, think Amazon, are doing their own logistics to deliver direct to customers, long-distance trucking routes are increasingly getting replaced with air travel. That said, the West imports an enormous amount of stuff from other bits of the world. In 2019, the US imported $2.5 trillion worth of goods from Asia. That stuff, which mainly arrived on container ships, made up over 67% of imports to the US. When shipping containers arrive at ports, they're offloaded to the quayside. One ship alone can deliver over 20,000 TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units. What is a 20-foot equivalent unit, I hear you ask? Well, each unit there is a 20-foot shipping container, so we're talking about one ship delivering 20,000 20-foot shipping containers, or the equivalent of that, so, for example, 10,000 40-foot containers. Back in November, at what seems to have been the height of the problems in logistics, there were 73 container ships awaiting to offload, and while it's highly unlikely that every ship there was an ultra-large container vessel, that's the largest category of container ship, that's still a hell of a lot of containers. Now, we're not going to talk here about whether we should maybe just buy less stuff. As a society, that's more of a question to muse on over a lazy Sunday breakfast, but once those containers come off the ship, they've got to be moved and stored and sorted and then find their way to those regional or national shipping depots. And the majority of that movement is performed by Class 8 trucks doing drayage duty. They potter around the port, shuffling a container from the ship to its location where it's stored, and then back it goes to get another one. All day. Every day. In fact, at some ports, 24 hours a day. Those trucks will end up doing trifling mileages in the grand scheme of things, and mainly at fairly low speeds, but they're still currently largely fossil fuel powered trucks churning out crud as they idle and chunter through their day. And those are jobs that are ideally suited for trucks with lesser range and smaller battery capacity. As of 2019, the trucking segment was averaging just under 8 miles per gallon, so getting these idling short-run trucks cleaned up is a vital part of our transition, along with buying less stuff. And for those of you wondering, because I was wondering, what's the average distance travelled by trucks in a year? Well, I've got you covered. According to the Federal Highways Administration in 2020, the average distance travelled in a year for a single unit 2-axle 6 or more tyre vehicle and semi-trucks combined was around 22,500 miles, or 36,500 kilometres, which equates to about 400 miles, 640 kilometres, each week. Okay, I hear you saying, but that includes all those dinky little Class 3 trucks. What about if you're just looking at big rigs? Well, the average combination truck covered approximately 59,500 miles, or 96,000 kilometres in a year, which is just over 1,000 miles a week, or 225 miles per day. That's about 362 clicks in a 5-day week. Research. We do it. All of this is feasible in even the shortest range truck we've talked about. Not ideal, but it could be done, which is not to pretend there isn't a market for long-range semi-trucks, because obviously it's ridiculous to pretend there isn't, or that every big rig is only doing 225 miles per day. There most definitely are trucks doing long runs for which a short-range truck wouldn't work, but there's also a market for shorter-range, less rapidly charging trucks in this new and shiny world, which is probably why Kenworth last week stated that orders for its electric trucks have tripled, and it's seeing interest across the country. It's why Elms is targeting a range of just over 100 miles for its Class 3 truck, and why Peterbilt's 579E has a range of just 150 miles. It's why pretty much everything electric coming to market is a day cab, not a sleeper, with the obvious exception of Tesla's Semi. Well, that and Nikola's fuel cell tray, which is coming to market later. So just like cars, there's one to suit everyone. And not every trucker needs a Tesla Semi. Horses for courses, as they say. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more soon. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave your thoughts in our comments or in our free to join Discord chat room. There's a link below. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and our other channel, Transport Evolved Take 2, and give the bell a gentle ding to make sure you're told when our next video goes live. Thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew go out to the folks on my right for being our $15 to $49 a month patrons. Special thanks to our $50 a month patrons: Chris Maxwell, Brian Newton, Jason Bodor, David Kitchen, Michael Goad, Ricky Leong, Andrew Martin, Guido Drahota, Brophy Wolf, Tesla in the Gong, Gordon C., Stephen O'Donoghue, Kyle Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Regine Fellows, Rory Litwin, Anonymous Freak, Jim Burness, and Denny Hyde. And our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month Patreon supporters: Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, Joe Bresney, JP Fagerback, Will Graylan, Matthew Drobnak, John Lyons, Christopher Lee Jones, Laura Reynolds, Paul Conway, Ellery Hensley, and Ian. Feeling left out? You can join Patreon at the link below, or show us your support through Bitcoin, Ko-fi, or our awesome swag store. Links are below. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving!